Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive deep into the very ambitious model of the XONJX XIIIth Legacy Trust Fund. We're going to look at its vision, its financial engine, and its claimed global impact. And just a heads up, everything we're about to cover comes directly from its own documentation.
So let's start with a big question. How would you fund a mission to literally reshape the world? It's a huge thought. And as you'll see, the plan laid out in these documents is just as massive. We're talking about something with a global reach and, well, billions and billions of dollars at its very core.
And just to put a number on it, let's start right here. This is the scale we're dealing with. According to their own documents, the trust projects that it will issue bonds worth a staggering $576 billion over the next 10 years. And that's across all of its global franchises. And here's where that money supposedly goes. To connect that enormous financial figure to a tangible outcome, the trust claims to have already built or rehabilitated this many homes around the world. So the big question is, how does a system like this even claim to work?
Okay, let's dive into the details. First up, we're going to explore the core philosophy, the big why that supposedly drives this massive operation.
So, the entire framework as they describe it is built on what the organization calls its 4 F's: faith, finance, franchise, and future. Now, the document presents these not just as catchy words, but as the absolute bedrock of its commitment to creating a lasting, generational impact.
And that bedrock, it has a very clear spiritual anchor. The Trust's documentation explicitly points to this verse from the book of Matthew as its divine blueprint. They state that this is the ultimate inspiration for everything they do.
So, that covers the why. But what about the how? How does the Trust claim to generate the incredible amount of capital needed for a mission this big? This next section breaks down the, let's call it a unique financial cycle described in their documents.
Now, this is the core of their financial engine, and honestly, it's quite unusual. As they describe it, the cycle kicks off with issuing bonds. Okay, simple enough. But then, the proceeds are immediately prepaid to the IRS. After a reconciliation period, the trust says it files a specific form, IRS Form 843, to claim a full refund. According to them, this whole process is what generates their capital. It is really important to note that the documents don't really go into the legal basis for how or why this specific mechanism would result in a capital gain, but this is the process they lay out as being central to their entire operation.
So, let's follow the money. Once the trust claims to receive these refunds from the IRS, where does it all go? Let's take a look at their allocation plan.
This chart gives us a really clear picture of their stated strategy. According to the document, 30%, the biggest slice, goes to the Treasury for stability. The next biggest, 25%, is funneled directly to franchisees to fuel growth. 20% is aimed at community development for social impact. 15% is set aside for reinsurance to mitigate risk. And that final 10% is split between compliance and supporting the Trust's core ecclesiastical mission.
So when you look at it, this whole distribution model is basically designed to be a pipeline, turning those financial returns directly into funding for the organization's various operational and philanthropic arms.
All right, so all of this financial engineering is supposed to lead to real, tangible results. So what are the outcomes? Let's look at the global impact metrics that the Trust reports in its own documentation.
Remember this number from the beginning? The Trust claims to have built or rehabilitated over 1.29 million homes, and that apparently includes everything from modular housing to refugee settlements.
And it's not just housing. In the area of health and wellness, the document states its programs have benefited over 11.8 million patients through medical care and meal distribution.
And for humanitarian relief, the Trust reports providing aid to more than 2.16 million refugees and disaster victims across the globe.
This table here gives us a snapshot of their claimed global franchise network. According to the source material, the Trust has its largest network of franchises, 150 of them, in Africa, with a reported $14.4 billion in annual bonds. You can also see the document details some pretty significant refund flows in other regions, like Europe and Asia.
All right, last but not least, let's take a look at the unique governance structure that the Trust claims oversees this entire global operation. How is it all managed? The documents state that a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization, governs their global treasury. Now, you might have heard this term before. Think of a DAO as a set of rules written in computer code that runs on a blockchain. It's meant to be transparent because all the rules and all the transactions are public, and it's autonomous because it runs by itself, without essential authority like a traditional board of directors. The trust presents this as its method for ensuring security and integrity across all of its operations.
And for its long-term future, its succession plan, the trust describes something really different. It draws a sharp contrast between a typical legal trust and what it calls an order of Melchizedek covenant. The documents describe this not as a legal agreement, but as a sacred one that's designed to provide eternal protection and transcend typical legal boundaries. It's presented as a way to make sure the trust's mission continues forever, guided by a spiritual authority, not just a conventional legal one.
And that brings our breakdown to a close. So, when you put it all together, the documents describe a vision of faith-driven global development, all funded by a highly complex and, as we've seen, very unusual financial cycle. So we leave you with this question. Is this a revolutionary model for global change, or is it a financial system of truly unprecedented complexity? The answer, as always, really lies in how you interpret the source. Thanks for tuning in.